Thanks for coming back for part 2 of the Corvette overview. Let's pick up where we left off. Now, around the door, I did kind of the opposite thing. I created a split that goes around the door, and then I used the extrude to extrude into the car to make a bit of a door gap. That always helps your CAD model look a little better. Oftentimes, how you treat some of these features is dependent on what the purpose of your model is. If the purpose of your model is just to learn surfacing or to make something that looks cool, then these are great. If you're trying to make some sort of a production model from this, you'll probably want to be a little more careful than I'm being in with some of these. You can see I've made extensive use of this extrude feature because I'm using it around the windows and doors. I'm using it for the rear tail lights and frequently throughout the model for other purposes. There's a ridge around the top of the model. This is part of the roof detail sweep that I've created. And again, this is one of those symmetrical features that you've either got to create the thing two-sided and then trim part of it away, or be able to create it one side and figure out how you're going to do tangency across the center plane later on. Here's the atomic bomb fillet I'd mentioned earlier. Let's take a look at how that was created. This is a fill feature, and let's turn on the mesh preview so we can look at this a little better. Bump up the density to look at this. Now I've created another temporary construction surface. This was using a spline with tangency settings on the end or curvature settings, and then extruded that surface and then used that open patch, that loop of edges, for the patch boundary on this fill surface. And that works out very nicely. Once you get rid of the temporary surface, this blends right in. If you turn off the edge display, sometimes you can't even see where the edges of the surface should be. So that blend does pretty well. This ridge that goes down the center of the car is kind of running into that and blending in as well. Now there were a couple of features in here that needed some attention, and these vents along the side were a couple of those, and so I trimmed those out and then started building ruled surfaces in there to get the sides, and so for the top and the bottom feature, and then a boundary surface that closed all of that together, and then they had to be trimmed, and further we needed some fillets on these to round them out and to smooth them into the rest of the car body. Let's see if we can pick up some of those fillets here. There's several ways you can go about creating vents like this. This is just the way that I chose in this particular situation. I didn't need to get 100% accuracy. I was really just doing this as a demonstration. In this case, I've put in a hood scoop, and this is one of the times when this is going in as a separate part. And so I'm making the symmetric hood scoop instead of just making half of it. And then I'll put, when I mirror the rest of the car body, that'll go in around it. Created some vents in the hood. We have some additional side vents for the brakes. And again, the grill for the radiator on this car is down low, and I used another extrude feature to push that area back in. Series of boundary surfaces start to fill in these side vents, and then I use some knit features and fillets to start rounding out the rest of the car. A lot of times when I create something like this, the final product is a series of surface features. Usually what you want to wind up with is one complete solid body. But in this case, it was a surfacing demonstration, and I really just wanted to leave some of it in surfaces. Plus, You always know that the last 10% on the detail of a model is going to take 90% of your work. Part of that will be because if you're making edits to things as you go along, you're really going to wind up repairing a lot of broken relationships. That's mostly what SolidWorks surfacing is all about. It's about repairing broken relationships. I created license plates and bumpers for the front and back. Here's my design stuff, license plate, and then we'll roll this down and see what else we've got. We've got the under part of the bumper, putting in a little tailpipe in here. Corvette logo on the gas filler. That was a nice touch, I thought. But detail, the more time you're going to spend on the model. And you have to make a call at some point how much detail you want to add in. I personally would have liked to have seen some wheel flares on this just to make it look a little bit better. One thing I remember that was very difficult about this model was the intersection between the wheel wells and this edge that goes all the way around the part. That's something I had to spend some time on and go back and edit here and there. It's very difficult on some models to develop the discipline where you get the model right to the end and then the last feature is the mirror feature. Sometimes you'll run into models where people will get this far and then they'll start doing other things and then they'll have to mirror those again. And then so they'll wind up with several mirror features. In this case, all I did was mirror it, and then I knit some things together to make sure the exterior was a single surface body. And then I used the delete body function just to clean it up a little bit. Beware of this delete body function. It doesn't really delete anything. It makes things inaccessible, because if you roll back before this, everything that delete feature deleted is still there. So it has to be in the model. It's just not accessible at this point. It's a good thing to do at the end of a tree to clean things up as much as possible. So I've got a couple of solid bodies in here. The license was a solid body, and I think that got something else in here. The filler cap was a solid body. And then the rest of this were surface bodies, and some of these didn't really need to be joined together. Some of these were on the bottom of the car, which, depending again on the purpose for your model, things like this may or may not need to be joined together into solids. So the tailpipes, I'm sure, are separate surface bodies, as are the bumpers. These are not joined into the general model of the part. Notice also that I've made extensive use of this panel for display properties, because a lot of times when I'm working through, I will make sure that certain features or certain bodies in particular are different colors. That helps as you're working through a model, just to identify things that you're working on or identify things that may be for reference only. So you might make all of your reference surfaces yellow or something like that. Because I'm not always creating color just for the visuals. Sometimes it's actually some sort of organizational trick to keep things together. So that's a high-level walkthrough of the features that it took to build this Corvette, and I hope you found this informative.